With just 21 goals scored in 18 league games so far this season, Manchester United find themselves in 14th place going into the new year, only 8 points above the relegation zone. We are 16th in terms of goals scored in the Premier League this season, and quite frankly, it is embarrassing. So who's to blame for Manchester United's failing forward line? Did Erik ten Hag set us up for failure with his transfers and tactics, or is there bigger problems at Manchester United? Do our midfielders not create enough for the attackers? Are those attackers wastes of money and wastes of space at Manchester United? And when you add in people falling out, the politics and the exile that successive Manchester United strikers have found themselves under, with the likes of Jadon Sancho, Cristiano Ronaldo and now Marcus Rashford, what needs to change at Manchester United? So who's to blame for Manchester United's failing forward line? Is it Erik ten Hag and the Glazers with wasted money setting us up for failure? Or does Ruben Amorim need to change his style and adapt a more simple philosophy to allow these players to flourish? Or is there bigger problems here? Have Manchester United accidentally created a squad that is simply incapable of making chances and scoring goals? In this video, we'll look at what has gone wrong and how Manchester United can fix what is at the minute a completely untenable goal-scoring situation. To look at what's going on now, we have to go back a little bit and we have to start with Erik ten Hag, because this is where those goal-scoring woes started. The 22-23 season on paper was a good one. United finished third, we won a trophy, Marcus Rashford scored 30 goals. What is there to worry about? Well, when you dig beneath the surface, Manchester United's goal scoring was a massive issue that season. United had some exciting attacking options. We had Jadon Sancho, we had Anthony Elanga, and we had the £86 million man in Anthony as our main wingers. And those two in behind Marcus Rashford and Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo didn't last very long. He left in January and was replaced with Wout Weghorst. It was up to Marcus Rashford that season to provide the goals, and he did so massively. 17 league goals, 30 in all competitions. Marcus Rashford finally looking like he was becoming the player that we all hoped and thought he might be when he broke through as a teenager all those years ago. It feels pretty good, but United scored 58 league goals that season, which is 30 goals fewer than Arsenal managed, and they finished only one place above us. 30 goals difference. That is nowhere near good enough. Manchester United that season had the best goals scored to points ratio of anyone in the Premier League, which basically means we overachieved in terms of the points gained from those 58 goals scored. We managed to eke out more points from every single goal we scored than anyone else. Basically, it's not sustainable. You need to be averaging around a goal scored per point gained, because if it's anything more than that, you're basically relying on your defence to bail you out for what has been a subpar season. Now back to Marcus Rashford. Those 17 league goals that he scored, it was fantastic, and we put so much focus on him and his goals, they almost forget the fact that he scored 29% of our league goals. That just isn't enough. You shouldn't have one player scoring a third of your league goals, especially, and no offence to him because he had a great season, it was only 17. If he'd have scored 30 league goals, I'd get it. But the fact that we only scored 58 goals in that season is a massive concern, and something that in his second season, Ten Hag surely would put right. In the 23-24 season, Erik ten Hag's team finished in Manchester United's worst ever Premier League position, right the way down in 8th, only scraping European football after winning the FA Cup. And you would think, based on that, well, the goal scoring must have gone backwards. It must have been a disaster. We only scored one goal fewer than we did the season before. It was essentially the same, 57 goals that year to the 58 the year before. The problem was the defence let us down that season. We conceded around 20 shots every single time Manchester United played, and we conceded goal after goal after goal. What happened then? Why did we stagnate around that 58 goal per season mark? Did we not invest? Did we not push? Did we not try to score more goals? We spent 120 million quid on the likes of Mason Mount and Rasmus Højlund to try to get more goals and to create more chances. And it's safe to say it didn't work. Rasmus Højlund, yeah, he ended up being our top goal scorer in the league, but it was 10 goals, 7 less than Rashford had got the season before. And to exemplify that even more, Scott McTominay caught up with Marcus Rashford last season and Bruno Fernandes. They all ended the league on 7 goals apiece. It just isn't enough. And when you think Mason Mount, who'd been this sort of absolutely Mr. Consistency at Chelsea, he was averaging 35 league games a season until he made the move to Manchester United. And since then, he's barely featured. He's been injured constantly. It didn't help with things. But at the same time, the players who were already there had a backward step as well. Yes, the new signings maybe weren't the best, but the likes of Jadon Sancho all of a sudden went from starting regularly to being in exile for most of the season. Marcus Rashford went backwards, as we mentioned. Anthony, he didn't start particularly great the year before, and even he went backwards last season. It's kind of understandable why the goals didn't really go in when you look at everyone being out of form, but the reason we finished so poorly is because that defence could no longer back up what was already an unsustainable number of goals. United decided to go for Rasmus Højlund that season, and I can see why. Very good player. He's got a lot of the fundamentals you want. He's quick, he's strong, he's tall, he's got a great shot on him. He's got a very good finishing record, actually. When he gets chances, his conversion rate is one of the best in the Premier League. But the one thing he certainly wasn't was proven. United were linked with Harry Kane and other strikers as well and decided we're going to go for Rasmus Højlund. We'll get to recruitment in a little bit and look at the failings there. But I think it's pretty clear to see that Manchester United haven't done enough in those final areas. We've wasted a lot of money in that final third. At this point, question marks started to arise around Erik ten Hag. It makes sense. You finish 8th, there's going to be a few questions. Ineos, as we all know, did this public display where they went and interviewed other managers and decided Erik ten Hag is our guy. And because of that, backed him heavily in the transfer window. In order to bolster the attack, United went out to Bologna and signed Joshua Zirkzee, a player that in terms of goals so far this season has massively underwhelmed. But Joshua Zirkzee, at the time that transfer made sense. He's the sort of 9.5 who could link the midfield and attack, something that we'd struggled with. Getting the ball from Mainu and Bruno Fernandes and giving it to the wingers and to Rasmus Højlund. I kind of understood why we went for a player like him. The only problem is, he hasn't worked out so far. He hasn't been able to link that play up. And when he has played, he's been an isolated number 9 by himself and hasn't been able to link really with anyone. He hasn't had many shots, he hasn't had many goals, and as the rest of the forward line can attest to, he's often not there in those crucial areas when we do square the ball. And all of this culminated, once again, underperforming on the pitch, not enough goals, transfers not fully working out. Erik ten Hag was sacked, as we are all aware, and that's where the Ruben Amorim era begins. And immediately, we have seen issues. Højlund gets a brace in his first home game under Amorim. He gets another one against Victoria Pilsen as well. And in the middle of this, we've got a 4-0 win over Everton. Things are immediately looking up in front of goal. All of this underperforming on XG, not making enough chances. It looks like it's behind us straight away. But then the confidence starts to slip a little bit and we fall back into old habits. United have lost our last 2 games both to 0, 3-0 to Bournemouth and 2-0 to Wolves. And I know Bournemouth are a positive side and they're pretty good, but Wolves are literally fighting relegation and we got beaten comfortably by both of these sides. Even the result against Tottenham where we managed 3 goals to their 4 in the Carabao, and 2 of those goals were down to absolutely catastrophic errors from Fraser Forster, which you can't rely on every week, the goalkeeper to basically give you 2 goals. We're not creating enough chances once again. So we're not scoring enough goals. Is it a tactical thing or is it a personnel thing? In terms of tactics, we've had 2 different managers with 2 different styles, both of whom have really struggled to get goals out of this team consistently. Personnel-wise, that's a different question. Marcus Rashford has gone from being a 30-goal-a-season striker to a 10-goal-a-season striker. That's a massive gap that needs filling. And the likes of Garnacho, the likes of Jadon Sancho in seasons past, the likes of Anthony simply are not filling that gap. Let's make a little bit of a comparison here. Let's look at the team at the top of the table, Liverpool and Mo Salah and Marcus Rashford. And maybe people will say this is a bit of an unfair comparison, and maybe it is. But Marcus Rashford is the person that we have relied on to win us games. Mo Salah is the person that Liverpool have relied on to win them games. And if we want to get to the top of the table, we're going to need someone who can put up those sorts of Mo Salah numbers. This season, 15 appearances to Salah's 17. The goals and assists for Salah are literally a joke. He's got 16 goals and 11 assists in 17 games. Rashford, 4 goals, 1 assist. Now, that is almost like, I don't know, I feel almost embarrassed comparing the two when they're both paid about the same amount. They're both regular starters. They're both sort of talisman for their clubs. And yet I feel unfair just putting them next to each other. But the thing that bothers me even more than the goals and assists, look at the shots. Rashford's had 16 shots this season. Mo Salah has had 63. 5 times more shots than Rashford has had. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, just the amount of times Mo Salah gets in good areas and his teammates find him. I'm almost not necessarily just blaming Marcus Rashford for this, because Salah doesn't just get the ball from the halfway line, dribble past everyone and put it in every time, although occasionally he does do that. He's found in the box far more often than any of our attackers are. The amount of touches he has in the box is ridiculous compared to any Manchester United player. And we need to create more chances. It shouldn't be this pipe dream that's impossible where Man United and Liverpool score a similar number of goals in a season. We shouldn't accept that that's just never going to happen. That should be where United get back to. And if one of our attacking talisman is having 5 times less shots than Liverpool's equivalent, that's going to be a big problem. Marcus Rashford couldn't possibly score 16 goals from the 16 shots he's had this season. It's not that ridiculous that Mo Salah has scored 16 goals from the 63 shots he's had this season. It's still very impressive, but it's not that much of a difference. In fact, if you look at the shooting accuracy and shooting success of the two players, Rashford's on-target percentage is higher than Mo Salah's, 81% compared to 65%, and their shooting success, which means their number of shots that go in, is exactly the same. They're both at 25%. So Marcus Rashford is just as clinical as Mo Salah is, except he takes 5 times less shots than Salah does. That's the true problem with Manchester United. So why are our attackers taking so many fewer shots to their equivalents at the other top teams? It's because we don't make enough chances. We don't get the ball into the box often enough. Now let's have a look why we don't get the ball into the box often enough. The wing-backs are a huge issue for Manchester United. We don't have anyone who can play there naturally. Amad Diallo looks pretty good there, but you lose him out of that number 10 spot, and it seems in recent weeks that Amorim wants him slightly further up the pitch. So you end up with Diallo playing left wing-back when he's not a left-back at the best of times, and he's certainly not a left wing-back, and you have a rotation of Diallo as well on the other side, and Noussair Mazraoui playing right wing-back. Again, 2 people who don't suit that system. And just to exemplify that, let's have a look at the comparison between Diogo Dalot and Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold. Unfortunately, it makes for pretty bleak reading once again. And whilst Dalot has actually completed more passes than Alexander-Arnold has this season, he gets on the ball and brings his teammates in just as often, the difference in creativity is absolutely huge. So let's look here then. You can see total passes 814 for Dalot to the 752 of Arnold. But when you go down further and look at the passes forward, Arnold there has got around 70 more than Dalot has. And the crucial thing here is through balls and crosses. Through balls, only 3 from Dalot to the 8 of Alexander-Arnold. And that's it, the 88 crosses of Alexander-Arnold to the 27 of Dalot. And that's the difference between 1 assist and 4 assists. Now, again, is it slightly unfair? Is Trent Alexander-Arnold an outlier in terms of not just his quality, but he basically pumps in crosses all day. He gets the ball and he smacks it in the box over and over and over again. So maybe expecting Dalot to put 88 crosses into the box is slightly unfair, but we shouldn't have it that all of our players are completely dwarfed in their numbers and their attacking output by everyone at every other team. Like, that shouldn't be what United accept. We need to have a system and players that can eventually get to those sorts of numbers and get between 5 and 10 assists a season rather than the 1s and 2s that we see from our fullbacks at the moment. Maybe we're being a bit impatient. Maybe some of these players can adapt to the new system. Amorim himself has spoken about how he wants to stick to this model. He said we have 2 ways. Either forget the new idea and try to cope, and next year we'll be here with the same problems, or we start now, we risk and we suffer a little bit, and we'll be better in the next year. I think we have to kind of accept that this is what we're going to be like. Man United aren't going to be making tons of chances. We are going to look like we're learning a new system with players who don't really fit that system. But for me, that's the only option. That is the only option until we can get better players who fit this system a little bit more and work out who works and who doesn't. We have to go through it to have gone through it. If we just constantly avoid changing because we're scared of the results, then we'll never change. Ten Hag did the same thing. He abandoned his principles and never played like he did at Ajax because he was worried he wouldn't be able to. So then we never were able to. And he ended up getting sacked after an absolutely disastrous year when eventually he tried to implement a few more of his ideas and it didn't work. So what's led to this moment? Is it the tactics and the manager, or has United's recruitment been pretty disastrous for about a decade now? Let's have a look at the strikers to start with. United have been criticised for basically a decade for going short-term with our forward line. The likes of Robin van Persie, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Ronaldo, Igalo, Cavani, all players in their 30s, brought in to do a job for now, but not for the future. That's been a massive issue in the past few years for Manchester United. But for me, the problem isn't necessarily that we've bought older players in. I mean, it worked with Robin van Persie. The problem is we didn't supplement those older players with younger players at the same time. It's either been one or the other. Look at Rasmus Højlund now. He's basically left out on his own and told to give us 30 goals, otherwise we're going to finish in the bottom half. That's not a fair expectation. The summer that Højlund arrived, we were linked with Harry Kane, and it was sort of suggested that you either got Kane or you got Højlund. Do you want that experience, but he's not going to be here in a few years? Or do you want Højlund, this player who could grow into a top striker? United needed both, and we still need both. It's not Højlund or Kane, it's Højlund and Kane. At the moment, United have got Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee, two young and inexperienced strikers who aren't used to scoring 20 goals a season, let alone the 30 or 40 that we could one day hope for from a top player. We need someone in there with them that actually knows how to put the ball away. And then you look in wing areas, the £86 million that we spent on Antony has been nothing short of a disaster. Like, for all the goodwill in the world, he has provided nothing like the kind of output you would expect from someone that is one of our most expensive ever players. Jadon Sancho, another one, £73 million that was completely wasted in terms of what we got from him in a Manchester United shirt. These are big issues, and the likes of Antony, that kind of transfer takes a long time to recover from. You don't just have £86 million lying around the season after and the season after and the season after. We've got 300 million quid's worth of transfer debts still on us for players that we need to sell now. We haven't even paid off a lot of these people before we let them go because they've been a failure. That is just terrible transfer strategy, and the sort of transfer strategy that takes a long time to overcome and fix. So moving on to the midfield, that 55 million that we spent on Mason Mount, I thought at the time was a decent signing, and it still could work out to be that way. But 18 months in, he's barely played for us, and when he has, it's been fine at best. And the thing with the Mason Mount deal isn't just has he been worth the 55 million, we can argue that between us, but would that 55 million have been better off spent on an experienced striker to come in alongside Rasmus Højlund? We didn't necessarily need a number 10. We had Bruno Fernandes, who doesn't miss a game, and in fact in those number 9 areas we barely scored a goal. That is probably where that money should have been spent instead, but again, we spent it wrongly. So we don't score enough goals and we don't create enough chances. Those two things need fixing. How can we do that? The obvious answer is Victor Gyökeres, someone who's absolutely smacking in goals for Sporting Lisbon under Ruben Amorim. He's averaging about a goal a game for them over the last 18 months. He clearly looks like a top player. The only issue is, again, the fee. You're looking between 65 and £100 million, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on which reports you read. And if that doesn't work, then what happens? Then people start questioning the manager. Then we have to go through that cycle again. It's a massive, massive risk. And are we just signing him because he used to play under Ruben Amorim and look good for Sporting? If that's the only reason we're getting him, I don't like that either. It has to be the scouting network, the CEO, the technical director, Manchester United as a club like this guy, and he happens to work for Ruben Amorim. Not just, he was pretty good for me last season, let's bring him in, because we saw how that has worked out in the past. Another player United have been linked with is Dani Olmo, the attacking midfielder for Barcelona, someone who they're struggling to even get registered for the second half of the season because of the absolute financial disaster that they find themselves in. United could potentially get him for a cut price, but whoever it is, they need to be someone that can create chances consistently. And it's not just going to be one player that fixes it. Gyökeres can't score 40 goals a season from 16 shots per season that Marcus Rashford's getting, or from the 1 shot per game that Rasmus Højlund averages. You can be the best striker in the world and you're going to get 16 goals a season from that. A 50% conversion rate would see Rasmus Højlund get 16 league goals. It's just not enough. So it needs to be a concerted effort from Ineos. We need new wing-backs, we need new attacking midfielders, and we need a new striker that can come in and actually hit the ground running and score goals consistently. We can't afford to buy more Antonys and Sanchos. We need players that are going to do the job from the first minute they arrive. So why have United barely scored any goals for the last 3 years? I think it's recruitment. I think Erik ten Hag was a good manager who was given a squad that was never quite good enough to deliver the things that he wanted to do with it. And I think we're seeing the same already with Amorim. It's going to take a bit of time, and I'm not ruling out Amorim. I think he's a brilliant coach and I think he can be massively successful. But we're already seeing the limitations of the squad he has. We need to buy the right players, and this as it always does, comes back to the ownership. The Glazers have wasted so much money over the last few years, and now it's up to Ineos to stop that from happening. The next 2 windows are absolutely crucial if United want to get back to the top. Can we bring someone in January? Can we supplement that with a big spend in the summer to bring Ruben Amorim a squad that actually works for him? Because if not, we're going to be sat here at the end of the season wishing we'd scored 58 goals like we did under Ten Hag's first season, wishing we scored the 57 that we scored last year. Because at the minute, we're on for about 45. Something has to change and it has to come from the top down. Amorim can only do the best he can with the squad that he has. He needs a better squad building for him, because otherwise, look at the mistakes, the transfers, the details that we've laid out in this video. It's not going to stop. It has to actively be fixed. You don't just get better because you wait or because you spend more money. You have to spend money on the right people, and that's where it comes in for Ineos to fix this problem. So hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and get your thoughts in on this. Why can't United score goals and how can we fix it? Get your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you in a bit.